Today's episode of the GoldCast is sponsored by lampshades. Do you not have a lampshade on your lamp and you're looking down on your phone and you reach out to turn off the lamp but you accidentally grab the light bulb and then you burn your hand and then you step backwards and you step into a bucket full of water because you didn't put that away either, and then you fall backwards, you hit your back, and then you break your phone. And then on the way to go get your phone repaired, you pop your tire, and then you get pulled over by the police for a popped tire. Don't let any of that happen to you. It starts with the lampshade. Get that lampshade fixed so you avoid that entire situation. Sold at all kinds of stores near you. Now, Raymond, before we get started, why don't you tell them where they can find us?
You can like us on Facebook.com/TheGoldCast. You can also follow us on Instagram @TheGoldCast, as well as Twitter @TheGoldCast_. You can also subscribe to us via iTunes, YouTube, and Stitcher, all under the same moniker of The Goldcast. Make sure to add that underscore on Twitter, though. That's the only difference between all of our social media platforms. And make sure to subscribe, because that way you'll get notifications when we go live with our new episodes.
Boom. All right, here we go. We're going to have some early reactions to a couple individual players from preseason game 1. Oh, so glad to have the 49ers back. Makes me happy. Here we go. GoldCast. Let's get busy.
San Francisco, are you ready? This is the GoldCast.
Boom! Welcome to another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the faithful. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Reuben Solis first, baby.
Boom! Raymond, preseason 1 is in the books. Welcome to the GoldCast. If you're listening to us, this is our bread and butter. Originally, many moons ago, we were called the 49er GoldCast, and that's where we got started. Why? Because the San Francisco 49ers is our favorite team. Because we won 5 championships and had one of the most dominating runs from 81 to 95. Because Joe Montana was the greatest, he may not be considered the greatest, you can argue that, but he is the most perfect quarterback of all time. Because Jerry Rice is the Michael Jordan of professional football. And Ronnie Lott and Charles Haley are 2 of the greatest defensive players to ever play the game. And Steve Young was a bad dude, ripped the monkey off his back, and got us our final SB win. This is the history of the 49ers. Welcome to the GoldCast. Ray, here we go. So preseason 1, it's in the books, man. It's in the books. I think I was really excited because this game is really the first preseason games, they're really not about schemes. They're really about individual players and how they react on the field, how they react to the speed of the game at the pro level, particularly some of our rookies. And I want to talk to you about who you felt stood out and who you thought showed some promise coming into week 1 of preseason for the 49ers.
Well, I'd say considering how much time he missed because of Stanford's school schedule and more so with the NFL's eligibility rule, I would say Solmon Thomas kind of stood out, considering he missed most of training camp and came out there playing as if he had been there the whole time. He was all over the place. He was inside, he was outside, he was on the left, he was on the right, he was on the weak side, strong side. He did a little bit of everything. I saw him pressure quarterbacks, I saw him stuff runs, I saw him attack running backs that were getting to the second level past our first wave of defenders. He was everywhere. And I'd say the second person that stood out to me was surprisingly Aaron Lynch. This is a guy who came into camp 30 pounds overweight and dropped all those 30 pounds and looked like the Aaron Lynch that we've all come to, be excited for. And he had 2 sacks. He had a pass deflection. He had he kind of did a little bit of everything, actually. He had a batted ball. He was awesome. I thought he was great, just using his length and his power. He just kind of muscled his way easily past first and second string guys, and then he got pulled. But yeah, he did a tremendous. Foster had a few flashes, didn't play as long as Thomas. Thomas obviously got more reps because he's catching up from all the missed time. All the missed training camp time. So whereas Foster's gotten it all, and I know that he was also a little injured on his ankle too, so I know that they're kind of being cautious about that. But I mean, those are the three people that stood out to me in that order too. What was it like for you?
I agree. I agree with that order. Reuben Foster, I was pretty excited about. I thought he had one of the flashiest plays of the game, which was the almost the pick, the ball deflection in the end zone against Alex Smith. He's got to catch that. He definitely has a catch up, but that was a great showing. It is very hard to almost cause a turnover with Alex Smith, and to do it in the end zone, I thought was great. And then the tackle before they made their first touchdown, that big tackle within the 5-yard line to the end zone, I thought that was great by Reuben Foster. I enjoyed it. Solomon Thomas was a beast. Very much impressed me. Aaron Lynch too. Those were the three guys. I think when the game was all said and done, those are the three guys that really stood out, and that was exciting to see. You know, I'm so curious as to what this defense is going to look like, and so just seeing these three players now. Remember, there's no DeForest Buckner, Navarro Bowman. You know, once all that gets in there, think about it. You've got Reuben Foster, Solomon Thomas, DeForest Buckner, Navarro Bowman, Aaron Lynch. That is rough. That is really rough. Like that might be kind of nasty right there. And that's just like, what is that? 5 or 6 guys? I can't count. 5 or 6 guys. Like that's going to be pretty impressive. What do you think when you hear those names? What do you think?
I think that it sounds like a front seven that's even better than the Jim Harbaugh group. That's what I think. Because, I mean, if you look at back at the Jim Harbaugh group, our front seven's strength was the linebackers, with Justin Smith kind of being the lone wolf standout 5-time Pro Bowler on our defensive line. Nobody else really – I mean, everyone else did well enough, but we didn't necessarily have another Justin Smith on the line. It was Aldon Smith, and he's an outside linebacker. We also had Ahmad Brooks, outside linebacker, also went to the Pro Bowl during that time. And then we had Navarro Bowman and Patrick Willis, both inside linebackers, both Pro Bowlers. So our strength was the linebackers that time, whereas this time I really think the strength of the line is going to be the defensive line, and that's typically the way it works. A 3-4, your standouts are going to be linebackers, and then a 4-3, your standouts are going to be defensive linemen. Much like the Niners were back in the 90s when Steve Young played, we were running a 4-3, and our standouts were Dana Stubblefield and Bryant Young, both defensive linemen. Although we did have Pro Bowlers in the linebacking core with Gary Plummer, Ken Norton Jr. So that's not to say that, I mean, Navarro Bowman is a Pro Bowl caliber player. So if he stays healthy, he's going to produce at that level. And then Foster, being the equivalent in size and attributes, if not more so because he's younger, is, poised to have a similar trajectory, and he looks, if he continues to flash the way he did in the preseason game, then he could be, another Patrick Willis in the making, where, Patrick Willis made made the Pro Bowl every single year that he played. So that is extremely promising. I feel like there's a lot of optimism with the faithful right now. And I don't know if you're getting that sense too. Are you getting that sense too? It feels like everybody's kind of really excited to see what this group can do, because I feel like there's a lot more credibility and faith in the coaching staff and the GM. How do you feel?
There's a lot of high upside right now. I would say and there's a lot of belief in the high upside of this team. It's funny you mentioned this was going to be one of the topics that we're going to touch on today, but I started listening a little bit to the Matt Maiocco's 49er Insider. Those of you guys who listen to the GoldCast, those of you guys are part of GoldCast Nation, I have a little bit of a disdain for many of our beat writers and television sports analysts, mainly because I don't think they're very good. And secondly, none of them are good enough to be on the national level, so we never have anyone voicing the opinion of San Francisco. We always have people that are... You've always got guys defending New York and Boston and Chicago and even Dallas. And even when those teams aren't any good, you still have a ton of analysts on TV defending those teams ad nauseum and, pushing this agenda of keeping those teams constantly in the limelight. Meanwhile, San Francisco teams, Bay Area sports teams, in 5 championship wins, 7 appearances in 7 years, won in all 3 major sports, one of the most dominating runs a city's ever had, the most dominating city of this decade without question, and nobody's talking about it. Nobody's defending it. Once in a while, you have Max Kellerman on First Take calling it a renaissance. No, this is an utter ass whooping is what it's been. It's been an ass whooping for 7 years. This isn't a renaissance. If Boston had been doing this or New York was doing it, you better believe they would have been calling this an ass whooping, not a renaissance. But I digress. Having said that, to make a long story longer, I like Matt Maiocco. I think he's a little dry. He obviously doesn't have the flair and the.
I do like Matt
issue,
too, but he is pretty vanilla.
Very vanilla, exactly. So I started listening to his 49er Insider. You guys should check it out. I like some of the interviews. I listened to Carmen Policy and I listened to Kyle Shanahan. And before the Kyle Shanahan one, he's talking to, I don't know, someone he talks to in the beginning. There's a woman who, obviously they both know a lot. I didn't catch her name, so I apologize. I'll drop her name next time. But they were talking about how there's just a sense of optimism and just a kind of lighter step within the 49er organization right now. And he was saying that back through the Harbaugh, Tom Sula, Chip Kelly eras, it was pretty obvious that Trent Baalke didn't really seem to get along with any of them. And so it was almost like there was two different organizations within one. And here he was saying how Kyle and John very much work in unison. And Kyle was saying that basically what happens is that they, like all the practice footage, John and his scouts will take a look at it. And then Kyle and his team will take a look at it. And then John and Kyle will then converse with one another and talk about what they see. And if they don't agree on something, if they see something different, then what they'll do is they'll sit down together and watch it together to try and figure out what exactly the other one saw. And Kyle's like, I'm never stubborn enough to feel like I know it all. Like I want to learn. So if John has something to teach me, I want to learn from it. I'm paraphrasing, but he said vice versa. John's the same way. If John wants to learn something and he, Kyle sees something he doesn't, he's willing to sit and learn and they look at it together. And there's just a level of harmony here that we have not seen with any of the institutions of this past decade with the 49ers. And that optimism and the proven track record of Kyle Shanahan as a coordinator lends itself to the idea that there's just a really high upside. And I think that is where this new resurgence of faith in the 49er faithful is coming from.
I couldn't agree more. I'm going to have to listen to that Matt Maiocco one because I didn't realize that he interviewed Carmen Policy. I did hear Carmen Policy on 95.7 The Game, and that was a really cool interview, even though I despise the morning crew, with the exception of Lorenzo Neal on occasion. But I'm going to have to check that out because normally I think his podcast is pretty boring. So unless he has, a high-profile person like Carmen Policy of all people, then I'll definitely make some time to see it because I'd certainly like to hear what Carmen Policy has to say. If it's anything like the 95.7 The Game interview, then I think anybody who makes the time to listen to that is, in for some really cool, insightful football knowledge. And Carmen Policy is also an attorney too, so he's very knowledgeable, well-educated dude.
Carmen Policy, so that one was really cool because during that interview, he's talking about the 92, 93 losses, back-to-back NFC Championship losses to the Cowboys. And he's talking all about how Eddie D basically said, this cannot happen again. We have to win next year. This cannot happen again. We have to win. And so he talked about basically everything that they did and the journey to win that 95 Super Bowl. And he said that out of all the Super Bowls they had won together, because he was part of all of them, he said that 95 was the most satisfying. He said it wasn't necessarily maybe the most exhilarating. He said, like maybe he thinks the first one might have been the most exhilarating because it was the first one and, what they had to do to get through. They also had to get through, coincidentally, Dallas to get the first one and the last one, coincidentally. It's so funny because we talk about this all the time. I don't know if I've ever necessarily consciously made that connection before. Our first and last Super Bowls, we both had to get through, right? Like you never thought about it like that. Because I always think of, I kind of separate the two eras, but our first and last Super Bowls, we had to go through Dallas both times. And he talks about it being the most satisfying, that the 95 win was the completion of a goal. And he said that in 92, he really felt like they should have won that it was kind of fluky, and they really should have won that one. But that 93, the Cowboys were genuinely better. And that's what really freaked him out, that they had realized that they had a real juggernaut on their hands, and they were young and they were cocky and they weren't scared of the 49ers at all. He also then talks about we haven't talked about this on here before, but I've been meaning to. He talks about the salary cap and how basically, the salary cap was invented to stop the 49ers because Eddie D was on the road to, basically making the 49ers financially kind of like the Yankees, you know what I mean? Just like all money, all ball, and basically the salary cap was invented to stop the 49ers. And he said, it wasn't an insult. He goes, it was a compliment, because we were just so dominant in that era. But it's really good. It's really interesting. The last thing he says is that he thinks the model franchise in all of sports right now for the United States is the Warriors. He applauded them. He said he stood up out of his chair at home in his living room when he discovered that Kevin Durant had been signed. And he said exactly what we said on the GoldCast. Go back and listen to this pod. If you go back, there's a podcast when we first signed Kevin Durant. Go back and check it out. We talk about the signing of KD and how it was the biggest athlete that we had acquired since Deion Sanders. And he said the same exact thing. I felt so vindicated about that. Go check that out.
That's awesome.
Check it out in our notes. Yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll have it. It'll come up in the right corner right now, and you can check it out. You can see it. It'll pop right up. I wish you could do that somehow on iTunes, but you can't. But it'll pop right up here, and you'll be able to see it on our YouTube channel. The episode where we talk about Deion Sanders and comparing him to Kevin Durant. He said the same exact thing, that it was the biggest athlete we've ever acquired in the Bay since Deion Sanders, and he applauded it. And he talked about how that's what you're supposed to do. The best team should go get the best player. And I thought that was really cool. And he said that he thought the Warriors were just the model. And he compared, he's thought about it many times. Said many times he's thought about the Cavaliers and the Warriors basically being the basketball equivalent to the 49ers and the Cowboys of the 90s. He thought very similar arms races and, neck and neck. They were always in the NFC Championship, but everyone felt whoever won the NFC Championship was going to win the Super Bowl. And he felt whereas in NBA they were actually competing in the finals, in the championship. But yeah, I thought that was really cool. I like Matt Maiocco. He's one of the few that we endorse here on the GoldCast. He is very vanilla. I haven't heard any solo ones. I just like those interviews. So we're gonna give him a shout out. Go check out those interviews and then reply in the comments what you guys think. If you haven't gone back and seen our Super Bowl wins, like some of our younger Niner fans, you should go back and see the 5. Like I've seen all of them. We need to do a deep dive this year of a couple of them. Mainly my favorite one. We need to do a deep dive on Super Bowl 23. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch it again, and then we should just do a deep dive in it and talk about kind of quarter by quarter what we saw, and then maybe 95, because I know you've got a huge soft spot for Steve Young.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah, let's do it. But if you haven't
nothing wrong with reliving the glory days.
Hell no. Go back and watch them. I would start. God, where would you start? I mean, I started at 81, and then I just went.
I would start in numerical order.
Yeah, go through the progressions and see the drive of the team. I mean, Joe Montana, outside of having Dwight Clark, I mean, is another next best wide receiver in the first 2 Super Bowls is Freddie Solomon, and he's kind of he passed away young in life, not long after. I think he passed away in like the 90s or maybe early 2000s. I have to double check. But Freddie Solomon's kind of one of those unsung heroes. I don't know. I don't remember. I've looked it up before, but I don't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, Joe doesn't have a tremendous amount of weapons. The defense is really, really strong. And then you've got 88 and 89, John Taylor, Jerry Rice, Roger Craig. It really starts to kind of blow up. And then that 95 team was pretty monstrous too, with Deion Sanders, Steve Young. That's a Jerry Rice again. That's a tough, super tough team. And, they basically keep it together for about 1 year and then weren't able to sustain it. Deion goes over to Cowboys, a traitor, which broke my heart. That broke my heart when he made that move. I still remember it. But, yeah, you should definitely go back and see some of those old Super Bowl victories. Who do we got next, Ray? When's the next preseason game?
It's this Saturday. We are hosting Denver, and they're also hosting joint practices this week.
I hope none of them get in a fist fight like Los Angeles Rams and the San Diego Chargers.
Considering that John Lynch and John Elway are really good friends, and that these are 2 like highly respectable franchises, and being the culture that they're reestablishing in San Francisco by bringing in guys like Steve Young and Jerry Rice, who were at practice earlier this week, talking to the team about the culture of the 49ers and just sort of the history of them winning and all that kind of stuff and what the culture was back then. There, John Lynch, and all of this is super, super intentional and super strategic because it's all about reestablishing the vision of, look, this was the persona that helped carry the Niners through 20 years of dominance. And if we are going to recapture any amount of that by any degree, we have to emulate that same essence. Obviously, it would apply to the contemporary period that we're in now, but you can still have the essence, the core, the foundation, the principle of it all reinstalled, reinvigorated into this group. And I think everybody is, kind of, steadily buying into all of this. That's the impression I get.
Well, piggybacking off of what you said and coming off that Kyle Shanahan interview, he said they don't have many rules, but one of the number one rules he has for the team is protect the team. And it's this philosophy, he said, whether it's on the field, in the press conference, when you're out in the city, protect the team. That the team, the organization, the 49ers bubble needs to always be protected. And he talks about remembering running through those hallways as a kid. He said that he didn't take off Deion Sanders' jersey basically for all of 94 and 95, and that was probably his favorite player when he was on the Niners during that one year. That was his favorite player.
How can you not? It was one of his best seasons
ever. He won Defensive Player of the Year that year.
Yeah, that was his best season as a pro. He made the Pro Bowl, first team All-Pro, and Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, so he talked about that. Also, Carmen Policy has this, I'm not going to ruin it. Carmen Policy has this great conversation all about George Seifert and Deion Sanders speaking for the first time in part of like recruiting Sanders over. But Shanahan talks about protecting the team. And so I think everything that you're saying is in line with this idea of protecting the team. And I think they're really, really trying to establish a new culture. And 49er Faithful, GoldCast Nation, I've said it once, I'm going to say it again. This is a 2 to 5 year deal. This is a journey. We're not going to turn around and win 10 games. We're not going to go 10-6 this year. It might still be ugly. It might be 4 to 6 games, maybe 8-8, maybe if we're really lucky. If Hoyer can not be Hoyer long enough, maybe we can eke out a couple more wins. But just remember, just show some patience and be prepared that this season is going to be tough. But there's going to be high upside. And I think we're going to see flashes of brilliance from this team that we haven't seen in several years. And then I think we're going to see still shaking off some of the ghosts of the last 2 or 3 years of struggle that we've had. And you got to be prepared for that. It's not going to be easy, but if you hold on, 49er Faithful, GoldCast Nation, if you hold on, just wait. I believe 100% that this team is going to rise from the ashes, and we are once again going to be competing against the Seattle Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals of the world, and we're going to be again in playoff contention. And that's not going to happen this year, but it is going to happen. It is going to happen within the next 2 to 3 years. Do we win a Super Bowl? I don't know. I mean, maybe 3 to 5. We'll see.
I mean, I don't want to get into predictions just yet. I kind of want to save it for the end of the preseason. But I certainly think we're going to be. We'll get to that at the end of the preseason. But I'll give a little teaser now. I definitely think we're going to be better than last year, without a doubt. That was rock bottom, and I don't think you can get any lower than that. Unless you're the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, no, I agree. We're going to be better. Do we finally defeat the Rams for third place supremacy? Save it. Just save it. Put that question in your head. We'll come back to it. We've got this Saturday, right, Raymond? The Denver Broncos this Saturday. So check out that game. We're pretty excited. I'm really excited. Then Next week, we'll see a lot of the starters out there, so that'll be the big one. But we've got one more game. We could take a look at more of the young Bucks. So let's see what happens. Go 49ers. Raymond, before we end this Goldcast, where can they find you?
They can find me on Instagram at RaySolis1 and on Twitter at RaySolis.
Boom. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Rudy Solis 3rd, Rudy Solis 3RD. Shout out to some of our Twitter buddies giving us love out there. We like it. Hey, keep throwing it out there. We'll throw it back. We love when 49er, if you got a 49er fan page, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. We follow everybody back. It's been awesome to see some pages not only following, but then retweeting our Goldcasts this week. That was really, really awesome. We appreciate the love. Thank you so much. Goldcast just kind of gets bigger and bigger all the time. This is the Bay Area Biased Review. You're here because you love our teams. You love San Francisco. You love what this represents. And this is what we're all about. All about these teams. We're all about talking about our teams and celebrating our success, our victories, and then mourning in the losses. Hopefully more winning than losses. Here we go. So concludes another edition of the Goldcast. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the first, baby.
Boom! Man, you love that dramatic pause after I call for your name. We'll see you next time.
Pause and now. It's all about the timing.
We'll see you next time. It's all about the timing. We'll see you next time. Same Goldcast time, same Goldcast channel.
This is the Goldcast.